Hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Thursday. Today we are going to be doing a rundown of Dev Diary 152, which is the roadmap for what's next, the classic post-patch roadmap. What are we going to be doing next? What are we going to be thinking? What are we going to be eating? These types of things. And so we will get graphics and a bunch of bullet points regarding what it is we are going to be going over. This is going to be led by Wissington, who is, of course, the lead dev, or in charge of the entire project. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. Happy Thursday today. Thank you. Of course, it is just to wish Happy Thursday and give praise. Happy Thursday forever? I'm not entirely sure that this is allowed. Okay, you're allowed to wish Happy Thursday, but this doesn't absolve you of any sort of moral responsibility to wish subsequent Happy Thursdays. I suppose you can wish Happy Thursday forever, but this isn't a get out of heaven free card, because everyone knows Thursdays are fantastic. He, of course, does capitalize both of them. Both are at the start of a sentence, though. Yeah, we get a double Happy Thursday, and if we get the salutation sandwich, where, of course, everyone knows happy salutations belong in sandwich format with a happy at the beginning and a happy at the end, this will be the happiest Thursday we've ever had. Yeah. Okay, but let's continue. As is by now a long-established tradition, of course, wishing Happy Thursday. After each major update, today we will be returning to the future update plans, which we went over last in Dev Diary 141. This is 152. As we always do, we'll be going over what changes and improvements we have planned for the game in future updates, future free updates such as 1.1, 0, or 1.10 rather, 1.11 and beyond. I copy the previous Dev Diary and slightly rephrase the intro each time? You probably can. Can I tell you? Can you tell I? We can tell. If you read every Dev Diary and you make a video of it, you can kind of tell that it's very similar in structure every single time. Before hopping into post-release plans, I do want to take a moment to reflect the release of 1.9 Charters of Commerce, and what I can really say. Can I really say except that I'm absolutely blown away by its reception. I am too. The level of so 1.9 is probably my favorite patch here, but the level of reception of 1.9 is just so enormously over every other patch in terms of how it's been received. Just like absolutely massive. In a way that's not proportionate to the degree by which it's probably my favorite in terms of how everyone feels about it. And I think a big part of that is 1.9 to some extent lets you role play in a way that was not previously possible and opens up new play patterns, and that this is really valued by the players, because now you can specialize, now you can trade, and now the companies are really a big deal that kind of facilitates that, and you can track the companies and this type of thing. But let's continue on. 1.9 Charters of Commerce not only exceeded our expectations in players, reviews, and sales, and not only the highest active player count since November of 2022, when counting monthly users. Steam concurrent players gets close but doesn't quite exceed 1.5, but also primarily brought a Victoria 3 to mostly positive review overall on Steam. Not only that, it is at last time I checked, and by I checked, I mean someone else checked and posted about it, it is also the highest rated DLC of Paradox for one of their flagship games of all time. This, of course, is something that we have been working towards ever since the release of the game by addressing community feedback and constructive criticism, one item at a time. Although, I think that something that's worth noting is I realized this last time I talked about the game, I think in one of these Dev Diaries. Sorry, my brain is getting melted by the fact that there's two different names for Dev Diaries. One of the things is almost every single one of their patches is mainly focused on either politics or economics, which I think is stuff that just generally speaking doesn't get feedback about. And so I think that in a lot of spots their work on stuff that I see a lot of feedback about has been somewhat secondary thrust of each of the patches. But that being said, there's not like a politics change or a economics change that I've disliked that they've done, really. So I definitely like all the changes that they've done. It's just the prioritization to some extent has not always been on, I think, what the community has been most upset about, which has just been military. But like I think that I'm less upset about the military as I think the larger community is. And I also think that people being upset about military is kind of like a meme at this point. But, continuing on, it hasn't always been an easy road, but we never had any intention of giving up on Vicky, and clearly, neither did you. Yeah, it would be nice if we could stop having the posts, "Is it gonna get imperated?" on Reddit. That would be fantastic. I think that actually, I think we haven't seen one of those since release. You see like one of those a week, normally on the subreddit or something like this. The future of Vict 3 has never looked brighter. That is indeed true, and we have all of you to thank for it. Aww. Just as important to learn from your mistakes, it's equally important to look at your successes and try and figure out why your successes, why they were so successful, and so you can try and repeat them. This is, of course, an interesting practice. I wonder what they think the biggest successes for... I mean, I think that the trade on the world market, I think, is like, and the ability to specialize again, I think, is such a big deal in trade and this type of thing. We're still very much in the process of doing that for 1.9, Charters of Commerce, but I do want to list a few things off the top of my head I believe were contributing factors into the positive reception. First, the trade work managed to find a good balance between autonomous economic actors and player control, giving the player the most powerful strategic tools to manipulate, but by removing the micromanagement aspect present in the previous trade system. Yeah, I do like the trade system a lot better. You pull on strategic levers, and then you kind of leave the system alone for the most part. And so you set up what you want to be done, and then you do not micro anything. And I do think that this is not only like good from a simulation perspective, but it's also good from a gameplay perspective, because something I was thinking about Victoria 3, and I was thinking about this recently, it probably does this better than any other game I can think of, is as you scale larger and larger, Victoria 3 does not add an enormous amount of tedium, which most strategy games, when you get bigger and bigger, what ends up happening is you require more and more micromanagement of different things. It starts to come into a point where you're not really thinking about things as much as you're just making a whole bunch of clicks for things you've already thought about. And to some extent, this happens with Victoria 3. Like, when you have 20,000 construction, you're just going to be clicking a lot more, right? But you can automate a lot of things. You can set up a lot of things to automatically expand, and you can also the trade is automated, right? You can just slap down a whole bunch of trade centers. You can just like tape down your control key so you build 10 stacks at a time, and it really, I think, does a pretty good job. And this is another layer to Victoria 3 doing a pretty good job. Thinking of games like Civilization, where you have more and more cities that you need to choose what you're building in each city, and turns take longer and longer to execute. I think that the number of decision points that you have to enter doesn't necessarily compound such that the game, just from a thinking standpoint and a clicking standpoint and an execution standpoint, really slows down as you get deeper and deeper in the game. It does slow down because every strategy game is going to do this, but I think Victoria 3 is actually pretty good at not doing this. And this is another layer of this getting better. This level of control is something we intended to use as a guideline when creating redesigning features of the future. For example, I could envision doing something similar with the production methods on privately owned building levels. That is exciting as well. Automating production methods based on heuristics and this type of thing. Another thing is also it's not just that it is automated and then you pull strategic levers, and it's not just this relationship. It's also that what is going on is, in my opinion, even though it's automated, what is going on is also relatively opaque, relatively transparent to the player, especially if you are a newer player or this type of thing. Understanding trade, I think, relative to the complexity that it has, is relatively easy. That's not to say it's like easy in the abstract, but relative to like what's going on, you see your subvention lever, you see your tariff lever, and you can you could watch the volume of trade change as you subvention or you tariff something, or as you do something different, or as you start producing a lot of good, you could see more of the trade volume going and like this type of thing. And so I do think that having much more having much more robust trade system also paid considerable dividends towards improving the performance of the AI and allowing countries to actually properly specialize in resources. This one is huge, removing much of the sameness present in the old autarkic central economic loop. So far, runs actually feel a little bit different from each other. A big part of this is actually the unique companies, where if you have a particularly good unique company, you kind of lean in other directions, but also the AI. This is something I hadn't considered, but Wiz is pointing it out here. The AI specializes a lot better too, by virtue of their businesses getting more profitable and them not running autarkic economies, but rather specialized economies, both on the back of trade overcoming MAPI, and also on the back of the fact that they are going to slot in companies, they are going to specialize in this, all these types of things. And so I do think that this is it's enjoyable to see Russia producing just gobs and gobs of wood. Instead of just kind of like the same autarkic thing, because economically speaking, wood is more profitable when you put in local buy and sell orders as a result of trade. And this was I made a video criticizing trade and lack of specialization specifically, and this was one of the big points that I made is that MAPI just completely removes any sort of semblance of anything other than autarky. And so I think that the game doesn't feel autarkic anymore. By the way, autarkic means you are producing everything internally yourself rather than trading. And so economies do feel dynamic and different. When you click on a country, you're not going to assume they're going to have the exact same economy as every other country, which is kind of the assumption you made. And when you build an economy, you can specialize in other stuff. I still think it's probably best to specialize in kind of the meta things, but going off meta is so much better than it was before, as long as the AI can keep up with you, which incidentally feels a little bit better, especially because foreign investment is really good, but when you dump a bunch of investment pool into other people's countries as a matter of it being good, it might be a little bit overpowered, but this actually grows everyone else's economy a ton, which allows you to engage in trade for a longer period of time and have trade be good for a longer period of time, which I think before your economy becomes so large that it reverts to an autarky. And I'm talking for a newer player, this isn't going to happen for them, but for someone who's strong and trying to push the limits of things, when you get $1 billion, 2 billion, or whatever GDP, where you're proportionate to world GDP, you're increasing in size, eventually it does become autarkic. But you can technically arbitrage goods to yourself even then at that point, though. But okay, let's continue on. We spent extra effort on ensuring the features of 1.9 and Charter's commerce would all hook heavily into and complement each other. I think they did a pretty good job in this, which made, it seems very centered around specialization, which made them individually much stronger. An example without the Grant Monopoly Treaty article, monopolies would have been a feature with much more limited internal-only use instead of a tool of unbridled economic imperialism. So, which we love. We love that thing. So treaties do kind of play into things nicely. I haven't even mentioned treaties at all. I'm more focused on the guts of the system, I think, than the treaties. Treaties are horribly unbalanced, but I think people are having a lot of fun with them, so I think that's fine. But yep, they got a mostly positive cake. I heard that it was mostly good. Mostly. That is, of course, for them getting mostly positive on Steam. All of this is to say that we're really happy with how everything's gone, and we're not just planning to rest on our laurels. There are still many things about the game we want to improve and expand on, like Diplo plays. So let's get to talking about that. Once more, we will be talking about some of the same key 4 improvements of military, historical immersion, diplomacy, internal politics, as well as other for anything that falls outside those categories. Just as before, You can tell that the format's somewhat similar. I'll also be aiming to give you an updated overview of where we stand and where we're headed by going through each of these categories and marking each one with one of the below statuses. Done. This is part of the game we now consider to be in good shape. Something being done. Why is it done capitalized? Done. Of course, it doesn't mean we're never going to expand or improve on in the future, just that it's no longer a high priority for us. Any points that have already been marked as done in previous updates will be removed from the list to avoid it growing unmanageably long. Yeah. But as you can look from older dev diaries, if you're interested to see what we've done previously. Updated. This is part of the game where we feel like we've made some improvements and some changes we want to make but aren't yet satisfied with where it stands and plan to make future updates. Not updated. This is part of the game where we haven't released any of our planned changes / improvements and any released updates, but still plan to do so for future updates. New. This is a planned change or an improvement that is newly added, which is self-explanatory, and reconsider. This is change we previously planned for improvement, but our approach to how we tackled previous updates, or I didn't read that, I just started making words up. For these points, we will explain what our new plans are and change the list appropriately in future updates. For a final bit of repetition, we'll repeat ourselves because we want to just repeat. Just as before, we will still be talking about improvements, changes, and features that are part of free updates in the dev diary. Important point of emphasis. I also remind you that this is not an exhaustive list of things that we are going to do. Something beyond being done doesn't mean we're not going to bug fix, balance, or make UX improvements on stuff afterwards. Like treaties are not particularly balanced right now. Actually, if you're not on the 1.9.6 beta, they're horribly unbalanced. But mainly because they're bugged. I know that we say this every time, but it's pretty necessary disclaimer. Yep, the disclaimers are always necessary. Every single time. Sometimes you forget to put them in and then you get punished and then you're like, that's why we put them in every time. Anyways, let's get to the good stuff. As always, we do love the UI or the graphic, the infographic here, but the information of the infographic almost always reads exactly the same as the bullet points down below. And the bullet points down below generally, if more information is going to be contained somewhere, it's going to be in the bullet points. So we're going to read through the bullet points to go through this. As gorgeous as this is, shout out to the graphic designer. But military, done. Tweaking and improving frontline system to eliminate excessive front splitting and troop teleportation once and for all. Well, excessive is doing a little bit of lifting here because we still do experience front splitting, although it is considerably less. And troop teleportation is still a thing. But I think that you can't teleport raised armies. But if you have unraised armies, you could teleport them, as far as I could tell from my experience. But I think we did notice that you can't teleport raised armies, which is an important kind of detail. Adding a proper system of military access and finding solutions for other remaining rough edges in the frontline system. I do like one of their solutions for the front lines to make them bridge like a gap of one state. So now there's way fewer front lines just in general. And also, we haven't noticed any need to, when our front lines have bricked, we haven't noticed any situation where we have to travel around a continent to reach the front line again. Of course, this was one of the reasons why you kind of needed troop teleportation. And so the fact that this isn't happening, or it's not, if the front lines are splitting, they're not splitting in as apocalyptic way. We haven't observed one instance of an apocalyptic front split which involves you having to run around a continent. So I do think that this is probably fair. Make generals / admirals into more meaningful and noticeable actors in countries to reduce the micromanagement of large numbers of commanders. In general, I think the design principle of Victoria 3 is that military is supposed to be hands-off, and also, it is a game that's more about politics, pops, and economics, and so making the generals more meaningful, this is important for the politics portion, right, and that's what I've seen by notable actors. What they mean is that they're going to be important in politics, and reduce the micromanagement of larger number of commanders. This is, of course, this is a little bit of a tough ask, but this is, of course, something we would like to see as well. Updated. Make sure that supply is an important and meaningful part of the military system that can win or lose wars. Yep. Now it affects organization instead of just morale or morale recovery. I forget which. That I forget which is kind of maybe an indication of how unimportant it was. And so now supply is a lot more important. But we want to do more in terms of adding interesting gameplay around logistics and tying them to the Navy. Navy rework is something a lot of people are asking for. Make navies more important for projecting global power and securing control of coasts. Yeah, this is one I think is really important. In particular, England or Great Britain had an enormous amount of leverage, or an enormous amount of... England was able to extract resources from the rest of the world largely by virtue of being a complete hegemon as it related to Navy, and this does not feel reflected in game particularly well. There's a few examples, like having interests everywhere will give you more trade advantage, generally speaking, but it is not... Great Britain should be even stronger than it is, and more dominant, and able to extract more in asymmetric kind of relationships. I think that also the trade advantage as a marker of colonial extraction, I think, fails to be sufficiently extractive towards the colonized people. Like, you still see high SOL in places that are getting hoovered up from resources, which probably shouldn't be something that you see. But okay, continuing on. I think a big part of this is that the Navy has to become more important and more valuable. The addition of blockades made navies more important for the goal of global power projection. This is true, but of course much more remains to be done here. Yep, so we're updated, not done. Not updated. Turn individual ships into proper pieces of military hardware that can be built, sunk, repaired, rather than just being manpower packages. Yep. Add a system for limited wars to reduce the number of early game wars between great powers. I think alongside this, I would love to see a sort of escalating tension mechanic that eventually erupts in a great war, and give you a sense of building tension as you approach that later and later and later into the game. Of course, you as the player is probably going to be obscenely strong by the time a great war pops, but maybe not. Maybe this is just a thing where, like, if your prestige starts to get too high, they start forming a coalition against you, and then it's like a 1v5 Great War, which would be so much fun and would be super interesting. And so, okay, let's continue on. Historical immersion. Improve the ways we simulate certain conflicts, such as the Opium Wars, American Civil War, and similar, to play out a bit closer to the way that they did historically. It's kind of interesting. I kind of think that they do, to some extent. But I'm less of a history buff, so my analysis of this is probably relatively weak. For example, the Opium War should not regularly play out as 100k British regulars seizing control of Beijing. That's maybe fair. Are they going to, like, railroad it more, though? Because that's, I mean, how you get Beijing. Well, okay. Updated. Going through the... Yeah, I don't know how they make that not operate like that. Other than make it so people can't defend landings as well. Well, I guess you could have it through scripted stuff. So we'll, not knowing what they mean by that, we'll see when that we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. Okay, updated. Going through the base game, journal entries, and making improvements and additions to ensure that they feel meaningful and impactful for players to interact with. Really do love that they moved a lot of things out from journal entries and into events like Atmospheric Engine. A lot of the journal entries tied to texts are now events that can pop. I do like this improvement. I think it removed a lot of clutter. As always, we've updated some of our older journal entries to 1.9 and will continue to do so in the future updates. Adding more country, state, and region-specific content to enhance the historical flavor of different countries. This one is, like, I think just generally hard for them to do with their design principle of being super sandboxy and not giving unique advantages to countries. So I'm excited to see them keep trying to do it. In general, I think that their approach is to use timed modifiers as rewards rather than saying this country is going to be better at producing furniture or this type of thing. But okay, as always, this is something that we will continue to do with each update, and I will keep on the list as it remains an important priority. Diplomacy. Now we're getting to the thing, or the area, which I have been... There's one feature that I've been complaining about for some long time, and that has been the Diplo play. And for I think close to 2.5 years now. This has been my biggest gripe with the game, and the thing that I think needs most improvement, and that would fall under diplomacy. So let's take a look. Done. Improve treaty port mechanic and create more ways for countries to cooperate, compete with, and exploit others through trade. That's true. Big improvements there. Improving war support system to be much clearer UX-wise about what is needed to contest war goals. That is true, but the war support system kind of has problems, which is part of the larger problems with Diplo plays. New. Rework war exhaustion. There we go. Rework war exhaustion system from where a single uncontrolled war goal can stalemate wars towards one where war goal control and war outcomes are more dynamic and interesting and much less frustrating. Yeah, currently it's very, very frustrating because what happens is you will have wars that you kind of have crushed the enemy, but you don't have the war goal, and they will persist and stay in forever because they can't be ticked below 0. You will also have wars where they don't have a war goal on you, so you can be ticked below 0, and you're crushing them, but it doesn't, or you're making enormous progress. You have a ton of strategic reasons to stay into the war, but by virtue of them not having a war goal on you, the entire thing, you can be ticked below 0, they can't, and you get ticked out of the war if it's a war that's going to be very attrition-y. In particular, we had an example somewhat recently on stream where we were playing as the Ottomans and we were defending Austria against the North German Federation. This was a war that was just going to take some time. We sided in to defend Austria because the North German Fed was attacking them, and North Germany did not put any war goals in on us. Often you have war goals in on you if you declare the war or you're a target of a war, but when you sway in and you try and join someone and you try and defend someone, sometimes there's no thing. And we were making progress. We were crushing Germany, and then we got ticked out of the war because they had no war goals on us. We could tick below 0. And so even though we were winning and pushing and this type of thing, we got removed. And we had a ton of strategic reasons for wanting the Austrians to do well, but it didn't matter because the way that the system works in terms of enforcement and the tick below 0 mechanic as a whole just in general feels really bad. And the tick below 0 mechanic kind of just feels like a Band-Aid over, a war outcome that would be more dynamic and interesting. Or a Band-Aid over the lack of, where it seems like it reduces more frustrating experiences overall, the tick below 0 mechanic, but that's just because the current way in which wars is decided is just generally kind of a bit on the frustrating side. I think, or like the mechanic would be frustrating if it was not unfettered, or if it was unfettered without the tick below 0 mechanic, which would be like even worse, where like you have more because you have like you lose 1,000 troops, they lose 1,000 troops, and because you have more troops raised than them, like you get ticked down faster than them, and like I consider this an extension of complaints I have against Diplo plays in general, but not updated. Make declaring and holding on to diplomatic interests more interesting and rewarding and challenging aspect of global empire building. I do think this is what they've mentioned a lot. I do think that this would be more interesting if they... it would be more interesting if it felt like you were projecting power in certain areas rather than just kind of having this generic amorphous blob of like activity, which is kind of how it feels now, and allowing peace deals to be negotiated during the diplomatic play instead of only having the option to give in. Yes. Currently, the declaration of the Diplo play does not feel like a jockeying, maneuvering type of experience that it is, I think, in terms of design, supposed to be. I think that it is like a declaration of war with a delay that occasionally you just kind of get kicked in the nuts on, where someone will join against you, relatively high variance, and the problem isn't the unpredictability of it and the fact that anyone can join any war as long as they have an interest there. The problem is that you have no agency with which to respond to someone joining against you. They automatically become antagonistic and get -1,000 relations hit or minus 1,000 hit towards what relation attitude they're going to roll against you. So you can never sway them out once they've been swayed in against you. And it just ends up being a very frustrating experience where someone sways against you to take something of yours, and you would just give it to them for free for them to just not get involved in the war, and you can't give it to them. The Diplo play does not at all feel like great powers moving pieces on the chessboard. It feels like a very blunt type of like instrument, and we could make a list of like 15 things we dislike about Diplo plays. One of them being the war exhaustion system and the tick below zero mechanic, but we won't do that here because we want to kind of continue on through here. But in my opinion, the Diplo play, like categorically, is the thing that needs like rework more than anything else, and has been for some time. I think that at least now it's a little bit more transparent in the UI in terms of people joining against you. Which was one of the Diplo things that was done, I think, last patch or the patch before. But I think that, I think that for a new player, getting sided against by Great Britain a few times and you not understanding what's going on and you having no agency with which to respond to this is a sufficiently frustrating experience that that could be the like break point at which someone's like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to play the game anymore. And so, for me, like this is, yeah, I'm going on too long about it. Just overall, generally, super loud car outside, but super in love with the patch. But in terms of things that I think need improving, the Diplo play is like unambiguously number one. And then number two is, I guess, I would like to see a Navy rework. But continuing on, internal politics, updated ad laws that expand on the diversity of countries and introduce new ways to play the game. In 1.9, we introduced concept of law variants, which we plan to use extensively, creating unique national variants of baseline laws so that those countries' political systems feel more distinct and flavorful. Super love this. For those of you who don't know, this is the canton system in Qing. I think is the only one that I'm aware of. There might be another one or two kind of kicking around that we just haven't seen, but it is a different version of isolationism. And I think that this is an excellent way for them to add flavor to the game while simultaneously kind of staying in line with their design principle of being relatively sandboxy. The real problem is you can't simultaneously be pure sandbox and also want each country to play differently, or it's very difficult to do this. And I think they're starting to move away from just like this pure sandboxy, every country's the same, every economy's the same. A big part of that's trade. Companies are something that you break parity with. Resources and different advantages for your states and this type of stuff are something you break parity with. And law variants can be another thing that you break parity with. Not updated, turning the legitimacy into a more interesting mechanic where the strength of a government depends on their successes and failures, and highly legitimate governments can't simply be ousted on a whim and have to be undermined first. Yeah, this sounds good to me. I don't have a particularly strong opinion on the legitimacy, or I don't have necessarily too much thoughts on how or in what way they would improve legitimacy specifically. But this does sound like something that would be nice to see. Currently, you have a lot of agency to maybe fiddle with the politics of the game. You actually have an enormous amount of agency, and maybe they want to reduce that agency or make you have to jump through more hoops to accomplish specific things, or this is what it sounds like, and I think that's probably a good idea. Introduce a concept of national pride, which can increase or decrease depending on the country's actions, which ties directly into legitimacy. I am one thing I have been also calling for, a little bit less recently because I've just been increasingly frustrated with the Diplo play mechanic, has been I really would love to see a cultural system overlay on top of kind of the current systems that they have right now, and maybe function a little bit like what is the political movements do. Maybe have cultural movements, this type of thing, and cultural scores that affect stuff. And this would be another way that you could break parity between different nations without giving unique advantages, like make some nations start out more jingoistic, where their pops are more okay going to war, and a country that starts out maybe more pacifisty, which this could affect also what ideologies you can roll. A country that starts out more pacifist, right? You would get malices if you go to war, this type of thing. And you could do a country's interest in like the arts, music, this type of stuff, science, religion, and all types of cultural tendencies of your pops that affect you in kind of more emergent ways that would give you more tools for changing and making starts unique, and at the same time not lock it behind a specific nation, because everything you can change your culture towards. I would love to see like newspapers and like music industries, or I'd actually probably rather just see arts reworked into like arts, like multiple different arts simultaneously, the arts academies. But there's a lot of these like I would love to see a cultural kind of overlay on top of things. For those of you who've never checked it out, the Morgan wrote mod specifically, I would recommend to kind of get an idea of what I mean when I say like arts, cultures, and sciences, like these types of things. Although I wouldn't necessarily include everything from that mod in like vanilla, I think that gives a good idea of where the direction, kind of what I'm talking about when I say like this cultural overlay system, and give you something to play for other than standard of living or GDP, or now kind of company dominance is kind of something, another thing you can play towards. But okay, continuing on, we have other done. Find a way to deal with the excessive fiddliness of the trade system in large economics, possibly by allowing autonomous trade based on your laws in a similar way to autonomous investment system. Done. Improve on companies by turning them into actual actors in your country that it can own, expand, building, and interact with characters' politics. Yet now there are heads of the companies. It'll be exciting to see if the heads of the companies become more involved in this type of thing, and we can see lobbying groups. I think that this would be really cool. And also, maybe if monopolies operate a little bit differently than they do currently right now, and that fighting with monopolies is something that the government does, and this is an inflection point you could add to the overall flow of the game, where, you're trying to industrialize, you give too much power to the capitalists who are needed for the industrialization, and then they start acquiring monopolies, and these like eat into your economy. This type of thing would be very cool if they had a system for doing that. But continuing on, as is always and forever the case, I'm not going to make any specific promises about when all of these improvements will come out, but I can say that in the next 3 updates, which are going to be coming out later this year, will be smaller in scale than 1.9, and will be mostly focused on bug fixing and general game polish, and be more flavor oriented per kind of their previous dev diaries. So we're not expecting any major mechanics feature overhaul for the rest of the year. You may have noticed that there's not too much new added plans this time around, and if you choose to believe that's because some of the long-standing boat-shaped things maybe will be looming on the horizon beyond 1.12, all I could say is words drowned out by a very loud foghorn. That's true. I should have just done I didn't know what was coming. I would have just made the foghorn noise. Yeah. So, we're expecting to see a naval rework. I really want the Diplo plays to get reworked, but I've been saying this forever. So, anyways, right then. And that's all for this happy Thursday. We get the sandwich, boys and girl. Right then, that's all for this happy Thursday, and also for this side of the traditional July summer vacation. So they're gonna be out for a while. They're gonna be out of the office. I think they're going to have like one last patch, and then they're going to be done. We'll be back in early August to talk about, or I guess they're just done. But they're working on 1.9.6. I know it's an open beta. You can opt in if you want. Maybe there's a skeleton crew, but we'll be back in early August in 1.10 and National Awakening, which is going to be featured around Austria and the accompanying. See you all then, and you all have a lovely summer. Almost as important as the Happy Thursday, but we do in fact get the salutation sandwich with a Happy Thursday at the beginning and a Happy Thursday at the end, and a happy Thursday forever, which I'm not really sure how to evaluate. If you guys have an idea of how we're supposed to evaluate this, or if this is even allowed, please feel free to let me know. But yeah, the overall, just general tenor, super, super positive. Really love this last patch. I think I kind of got in the weeds a little bit complaining about the Diplo play, because that is something we like to complain about, because reasons. But overall, this patch has been fantastic. Really, really love what they've done to move the game towards not being as autarkic, give you incentive to specialize, this type of thing. If you want trade to be a central feature of your game, specialization is important because you have to have comparative advantage, which is brought about by ability to specialize in this type of thing. Your ability to do other things better than other nations is important for creating the background by which trade can happen, and this happened here. We also got treaties, which the combination of being able to specialize in treaties, I think, is a big part of why this patch has been so successful, because for most people, I think the treaties for them gives them something to latch onto in terms of roleplay and this type of thing, in addition to specializing. But yeah, we can have our cake and eat it too. No, wait, that doesn't even make sense. Let them eat cake. Yeah, but okay. If you like this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm thing, hit the notification bell, and other than that, have a happy Thursday forever.